Okay, welcome everybody to another mixing video. Today we're going to be looking at top-down mixing. So the concept of top-down mixing is starting with big elements such as your master fader and working your way down through smaller elements like your group channels, and then even smaller your individual tracks. So it's kind of like you're affecting the entire mix, then the groups, then the individual tracks. And the thought process behind it is that if you correct things as a whole, you'll have to do less when it comes down to the individual tracks. And I actually use this method quite a bit. In fact, I always start with a mix bus chain. I did a video on mix bus processing, so what I did was I actually used that same exact chain that I always use, and just to save some time for this. So if you want to learn more about this chain, I'll include a link to that mix bus processing video in the description. So let's start by popping this chain in and out, and then we'll go and do the group channels. So yeah, let's go ahead and listen to that.
Any way that you can, any way that you can. Any way that you can, any way that you can. Any way that you can, any way that you can.
Okay, so to me, before it was just a little bit muddy. We got to contain the dynamics a little bit with some compression. We added some saturation with this tape machine, which I'm using 30 IPS and FG9 on this one because this is a newer tape. This is a little bit more modern sounding, the track that is, and 30 IPS, like it just gives you more accurate of your original signal's frequency. 15 IPS kind of has like a low end bump, which would be nice on this too, but I wanted to go ahead and try 30 IPS. Usually I use 15, but for this track, yeah. And then I just monoed out the bass, monoed out some of the low mids, and then widen up the high mids and the highs. So yeah, I have a video on that. Like I said, it'll be in the description. So let's just move on. Next I would go to the pre-master bus, and gonna go ahead and do some processing there. Okay, so um, this pre-master chain actually added a lot. Um, so let me just explain what I did there. Um, to get a little bit more of the kick, I boosted at 60. To get a little more of the cymbals, I boosted at 8K. Little tiny boosts. And the thing about the pool tech is it has tubes, so it kind of warms this whole thing up. And you can boost or cut a lot, and it's pretty transparent. So yeah, I like to use pull tech on an entire mix because this pre-master is basically just another master fader. So I just wanted to do a little more processing than I usually would. So let me explain what I did with the API here. So basically I just boost the crap out of each one of these and then decide if I want to boost or cut frequency or just keep it the same. So I think I did something on every single one of these. So 16K just gave it some air, and when I'm boosting on an entire mix, I like to not go higher than a dB if possible. So 16K gave it some air, 8K had a little bit of the cymbals and presence in the vocals, same as with the pull tech there. 4K was just a little nasally. I cut that back. 2K had some presence in the vocal. 1K was kind of a nasty part of the vocal. 500 is almost always muddy, so I cut that. 250 was a little muddy too, because this is an octave below 500, right? So 125 is an octave below that. In fact, if you look at all of these, they're pretty much all octaves of each other. But anyhow, 125 I actually liked. It fattened up the bass guitar a little bit. 63 didn't do anything, so that's the only one. 31, I gave it a little bit of a bump, just because I'm actually high passing at 31 here at on the mix bus. So just to add a little bit of the body back in there, I boosted there. So another thing I like to do is add some reverb on an entire mix to kind of give it the sense that it was all recorded in the same room, which I actually believe that this track was. It almost sounds like this track was recorded live by a very good tracking engineer. Anyhow, I used the UAD EMT 140 plate, which is my favorite reverb. And what I did was I used plate B, which is pretty warm, and I took the reverb time all the way down, so that gives it kind of a nice like room sound. I used the sidechain filter here, or not sidechain filter, just some filtering on it, 360, because I don't want all that low end to have reverb on it. And then besides that, this wet button makes it 100% wet, so I just took it out, and I liked it exactly where it was. So moving on, I'm not exactly sure what this Saphira does, but I know that it adds harmonics, and to me what it does is it helps all your analog emulated plugins, and it just gives it a sense of depth to me. And what I like to use is actually a preset called 3D. So I use that, and then I take the tape emulation off because I'm using virtual tape machines as my tape sound. So other than that, I mean, it added a little bit of gain too, but look at these harmonics on the top end, and it's cutting out some nastiness too. It gives it some depth. So just these two plugins alone, two plugin chains I should say, adds a lot. Okay, so moving on, I'm actually gonna go to drums next, drum bus. So let's listen to that. And I don't do too much here.
That she can. Any way 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 that she can.
Okay, so let's look at that. There's not much going on there. I just high pass filter, get rid of that ultra low end, cut some around 315, just some boxiness and muddiness, and then a slight shelf boost, 1 dB at 8K, and then just a little bit of revival, shimmer, thickness, very light. Moving on, I used FG Red, which I love on drum bus. Ratio of 4:1, slowish attack to give it some punch, fast release, high pass filtering around 55, just so it doesn't, that kick drum doesn't trigger this too much, but I also want it to compress the kick drum a little bit, so I originally had it all the way up and just dialed it back until I heard some compression going on there. Dialed the threshold to where I'm getting 2 to 3 dB of gain reduction, made it up with the makeup gain, and just added a little bit of drive because drums love that. So moving on, let's go to bass.
Any way that she can. Any way that she can. Any way that she can. Any way that she can.
Okay, so let's go over what I did with the bass there. Um, I did a low cut with a very gentle slope, 6 dB, minus 6 dB per octave, at 40 hertz. So you might be thinking, oh, why are you high passing bass? Well, because I want to leave some more room for my kick. Okay, and I'll be adding some low end in later. Then I went on to use an LA2A, and the gray is my favorite on bass. Just the way it distorts is just so perfect for bass, and it's real smooth, and just the speed of it is perfect for bass to me. So I was going for about a dB to 2 dB of gain reduction there, because on the track level I'll be using compression too. So just gentle compression there to glue the two bass tracks together. Next, I used a couple boosts here with the API 550A, a little bit of 800 and a little bit of 100, and I just dialed the output back a little bit to kind of level match a little. Then R bass, just to add some low end harmonics, very very low amount, barely anything, but if you heard it, fattened it up real. I mean, this plugin, if there's one Waves plugin to get, this is it. This does something that I can't find anything else that does it, which is the nice thing about Waves. And I also just dialed that back a little bit because I was looking at the meters and I was getting quite a bit of gain from this chain. But to me, now it's pretty much where it was at volume wise, and it's sounding good. So next we'll look at guitars, and all I do to that is just add a little bit of compression. Okay, so the LA3A is perfect on guitars. To me, it just glued all those tracks together, brought some of the things that you couldn't really hear very well forward. I set it up to where I was getting a little bit of gain, a little bit of a gain boost, but to me, it was quite pleasant. It wasn't too much. You can hear what this thing is doing, no problem. As far as piano, all I do for that is a little bit of pull tech, and that's it. So let's listen to that real quick.
Can we even go on? How can we? How can?
Okay, so that's it. Very simple. Just a low end boost at 100 and a high end boost at 8K. Brings it forward, fattens it up a little, and yeah, that's it. So as far as background vocals, there's a couple different things I do, and I'm gonna actually end up doing a background vocals video on its own. So yeah, there'll be more than what I'm gonna do in this video, because this has already been quite long. So I'm just gonna do a simple move, and you'll just have to keep your eye out for mixing background vocals video for a more in-depth look at that.
Can we even go on? Any way that you can, any way that you can. Any way that you can, any way that you can.
Any way that you can, any way that you can.
Any way that you can, any way that you can.
Okay, so let's look at what I did there. So high passing at 100, cutting some muddiness at 308, cutting some nasaliness at 300, and with the FGN or any 1073, I like a boost at 12K, I like a boost at 7.2, a little bit at 200, and yeah, that's pretty much my go-to vocal EQ with a well-recorded track, that is. With the 1073, and then a little bit of thickness and a little more shimmer on Revival. And then what I did here with the FG Mu, which is kind of like a Fairchild, compressed it a little heavier in the center because this is mid-side. Had a fast attack to make it sit back, quick release, had it to where it's not compressing the muddiness. little bit of compression on the sides, and what I did was I turned the volume of the center down and the volume of the sides up, so get a little bit of depth and imaging there. And just to help the stereo spread a little more, I used this wonderful plugin called Little Micro Shift. This is a great plugin, and it's really cheap, and sometimes they have sales on it and it's even cheaper. So this is a great plugin, and you heard what it did there. So yeah, let's listen to it one more time real quick, and we'll pop that entire chain in and out. Okay, so to me, it's more present, it's wider, it's a lot cleaner sounding. So let's just move on to the lead vocals, and that'll be it. Actually, in fact, as far as lead vocals, I'm just gonna go ahead and do this. Copy these over, and I'm not gonna use the little micro shift here because I'm gonna end up doing a video on vocal spread, which I'll show you what I do to make lead vocals wider. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna basically reverse the settings here of what I did on reverse the settings of what I did on the background vocals. Excuse me. Okay, so you know what, I'll still make these a little wider here. Okay, so let's listen to it, and then I'll adjust it more. Okay, so I was forgetting that this is a mono vocal. There is 2 vocal tracks, but they're both in the center. So, oops. The side here isn't affected, just what's in the center. So, light compression on that. You could see that it seems like there's a lot of plugins, but each plugin is just doing a little bit. And these little things add up a lot. So, I'm not going to do anything here on the effects because there is no effects except for the reverb on the pre-master bus. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start this part of the song over again, and I'm just going to take everything in and out, and you can hear the difference of the dry mix versus the process mix. Okay, so let's listen to that.
Anyway
Okay, so as I think you can hear, that's a huge difference. Everything's cleaner, everything's brighter. Maybe a little bit too bright. Maybe I was a little heavy-handed with the high end, but that could be adjusted later. This was, I'm sure this video is very long, but in the grand scheme of things, this was a quick mix. And really, on the track level, it's not going to require very much. So this is top-down mixing, and I think you can agree that this is a great approach, because now when it comes down to mixing these individual tracks, it's going to be a lot easier, and I'm not going to have to make as many EQ moves or compression. This will dictate the moves that you make, and this is already sounding really good like this. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something new. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a like. If you disliked it, go ahead and give it a dislike. That's fine. You're entitled to your own opinion. If you really liked it, please subscribe. Go ahead and leave me a comment if you have any questions, or send me a message. I'd be happy to help you out or explain any of these moves further. And keep your eye out for some more videos, because there's definitely more to come here. So thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and stay tuned. Thank you.